ever-flowing power of pure spirit. We say that the river of life, forever flowing through us, is ever ready and willing to take the form which we give it. It appears that we have the ability, at least temporarily, to pollute this stream of life with the consciousness of hate, despair, or any negative thought which denies its purity. But of course, we do not really have the power to destroy, only to mold and remold. It is fortunate indeed that this is true, for in spite of all our misdirection, we are still being carried forward on the bosom of this infinite stream to a harbor of perfect safety. We may rest in absolute assurance that goodwill will be the final goal of all things. We can hasten the advent of this good by definitely clarifying our thought and by daily meditating upon the invisible source, the wellspring of life within each one of us.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yay. Very nice, Nancy.
Please join me in using the almighty power within for good by saying together,
with deep conviction that life is good and for me, I throw myself with complete abandon into the limitless sea of receptivity, allowing myself to be perfect reflection of the flawless, radiant brilliance of spirit within. Yes. So we came into this life, I am absolutely sure of this, to shine the radiant brilliance of who we are, ablaze with the source itself, the source of all that is, that light of the divine. However, along the way, this is kind of what happens in life. You know, we immerse ourselves in this culture around us as we are born into this life. And along the way, we can kind of pick up some debris of false thinking that can at times block the radiance of that light. And so this entire month is about using the principles that are related to diamonds, the quality of diamonds, and the clarity of diamonds, and the brilliance of diamonds, to apply those same principles to our lives. And I love how life is full of metaphors like that can inform us. You know, if we contemplate just the simplest thing, how that can illumine us about our path forward as radiant lights of the divine. So what are those particular things that we're talking about each day? Well, it's called the 4 C's. And it is cut, clarity, color, and carrot. Last week we talked about cut, you know, how we, through forgiveness, the process of forgiveness, we cut away that which does not belong and bring ourselves back to that luminescence that we are, trimming away the false beliefs. And today we're going to be talking about clarity and how that principle of clarity plays out in our lives when we understand it and apply it. So what I'd like us to do is, we're going to do what we did last week, but just, you know, continue on this awareness, because we know that our thoughts create. So as we do this, let us brush the conditioned mind and all of its false beliefs off our shoulders and say, I am open.
I am open.
I am ready.
I am ready.
I am receptive to my good.
I am receptive to my good.
Lovely. And now I'd like you to turn to a neighbor and say, your slip is showing. Your slip is showing. Okay, so here it is. That's a little. No, hardly anybody wears dresses anymore these days, right? So here's what we say after that. I see your super luminous infinite presence. I see your super luminous infinite presence. I see your super luminous infinite presence. Your super luminous infinite presence. Okay. Luminous infant. And how easy it is to see the light in others, right? And yet we can't possibly see that unless it's already within us. That's the principle. That's how it works. So we can own that as ours right here and right now. So today, diamond clarity, and how does that apply in our lives? So here's the thing, is diamonds are rated on a scale, actually it's a 5-point scale, all the way from flawless or superluminous, we can say, superluminous, to what they use the term inclusions. Notice they use the term inclusions instead of flaws. So all the way down to a certain level of inclusions. And I'll be using that a little bit later, so you'll see how that works. So I want to first start with, so the idea is the clearer the diamond, the more brilliantly it shines, the more light it reflects. So how does that apply to us? I'm going to call that the clarity principle. So let's go back to the spiritual truth. The spiritual truth is that we already are that super luminous infinite presence. We already are that because we are individualized expressions of the one grand super luminous infinite presence, that one light. So the way that we return to shining that light more brilliantly is through our thought, through what we're focused on, where we place our attention. And what we have come to understand, thanks to all of the great spiritual giants that have come before us, is that when we focus on the spiritual truth, we call that clear thinking, that we shine our light more brilliantly. So it's not just positive thought, it's focusing on the higher truth of what God is, who we are. So we are the perfect, clear mind of God, individualized. And so how much clarity of thought are you willing to have today? How much clarity of thought are you willing to have each and every day? See, the beautiful thing is we have the power of choice each and every day to what we think. Yes, thoughts arise. So there's that come out of our subconscious mind. At the same time, we have the opportunity to turn that around. We have the power to do that. So unlike the diamond, which is kind of stuck with its rating, right? We can actually clarify ourselves. We have the power to clarify ourselves in an instant, just simply by focusing on spiritual truth. So the greater the clarity of thought, the greater the brilliance. That's how that works. And here's another thing that I really want to bring to our attention and remind us of, is that we, in Science of Mind and New Thought, we believe that we are born of original innocence, not sin. We are born of original innocence. All you need to do is look at a baby. Born of original innocence. Innocence is our nature. And so, therefore, we are, and I just want you to actually repeat after me. I am pure, good, innocent, life. I am the life of God. Right. Made in the likeness and image of the divine. That's how it works. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, a little bit more about this thing called clarity. It all goes back to the understanding of the intelligent creative principle by which life works. We know that we are surrounded by a universal intelligence mind. Some people call it energy, but there's an intelligence that's present that responds to our thought and produces that. So let me illustrate. A married couple, age 70, was celebrating their 50th anniversary. And we have somebody here who just recently celebrated their 50th anniversary, yes? Yeah, Marianne and John. So anyway, last year was last year, yeah. So, so just imagine then that this couple suddenly is visited by a good fairy who says that she will grant them any wish that they desire. Each one of them has a wish. So it doesn't take long for the wife to figure out what she wants. She says, I would like a trip around the world for both of us. And so, whoosh, in her hands, the tickets, all the tickets that she needs, the cruise tickets, the plane tickets, everything that's necessary for a trip around the world. And then it comes time for the husband, and he stops and he thinks for a moment. And he says, I would like a partner who is 30 years younger than myself. And so, whoosh, he turns 100 years old. A great demonstration of how the universal creative intelligence works, right?
Be very
So
specific.
oh my goodness. So this is a great example of someone who was not using his clear mind, right? Because he didn't think about the consequences of his choices, and it wasn't coming from that place of love for his wife, you know. So think about that. That's, you know, there's the universal mind that responds to us, and it's also the intention behind the thought that makes the difference. Is it coming from love or not? You know, where is it coming from? So it makes sense then that the clearer we are in our thinking, the greater we are in alignment with truth, with love, with peace, with joy, with a higher intention, the better that the creative intelligence can organize energy. And that's what's so cool about it, to support our aspirations, our causes, and our personal happiness. I'm going to say that again. So it makes sense that the clearer that we are in our thought, that means aligning with the higher principles of love and peace and intelligence and harmony, the better that the infinite, intelligent, creative principle of life can support us in realizing the good that we desire. Let's talk a little bit about clear thinking versus ants. So, ants, automatic negative thoughts that come from the subconscious mind, that come from the beliefs that are harbored in our subconscious mind in separation of any kind. And those are those thoughts that kind of show up that we're really not, we didn't think we invited, you know? But when we understand that, we can have some compassion with ourselves and gentleness with ourselves, knowing that it was part of the social conditioning along the way, and we can turn that around. And here's the cool thing that I keep going back to, and it's really important to remind ourselves of. We don't have to clear away all that stuff in our subconscious mind. What's important is the dominant thought that we have throughout the day. What is the dominant direction of our thinking? And we have control over that when we are conscious and when we are awake and when we are aware. So that's clear thinking. So, what Stuart Wilde says about this thing called ants, that I think is so beautiful. He says, without mental discipline, we can call that clear thinking. It's like 40 chickens in a truck that are constantly flying about. There are feathers everywhere, and a tremendous commotion is going on. Somehow, you've got to sit your chickens down and quiet them. You can think of the chickens as our thoughts, right? And quiet them. We do that through meditation, our meditation practice. So we learn to quiet, or at least to witness it, watch the rise and the fall of negative thoughts or whatever thoughts are going through our minds, and practice that being our true identity, which is the observer of that. And then ultimately in our daily life, the chooser of where our mind is going. So when the automatic negative thoughts come up, we go, okay, oh well. And then we just pivot and turn in a new direction of clearer thinking. Doesn't that feel better? So you don't have to be vigilant and struggle to get rid of every negative thought. All you need to do is just shift and create the dominant thought. And that takes care of it. The next principle that I want to speak about is the principle of inclusion. So let's go back to diamonds again. Diamonds, of course, have inclusion, and there actually is a good thing about this thing called inclusion, is that is the way that each diamond has its own unique identity. So that when you've taken it to be cleaned or whatever and it's returned to you, if you're able to look at that, that that's your particular diamond. And just in the same way, we have inclusions. Every one of us has uniqueness, and I like to call it uniqueness about ourselves that gives us the identity that we have. I was thinking about one of the examples of inclusions that actually adds value is, they talk about diamonds that have inclusions that have certain shapes, like dolphins and hearts and things like that. Actually, okay, there's a good example of one, okay, that are rose, they actually have more value to them. So we can think of our idiosyncrasies, our differences, those things that make us who we are, as inclusions instead of flaws. So, how flawed do you tell yourself that you are? Anybody? I mean, you don't have to say, but think about that. What are the things that we're focusing on that we don't like about ourselves when in truth, that's what gives us the uniqueness that we are? So, what would happen then if we started doing that on a regular basis? Instead of looking at something on our bodies and saying, oh, I wish I didn't have that, or whatever it might be, to say, that's my inclusion. It's part of what makes me unique. It's good and very good. And of course, the cells of the body have intelligence and they respond to us. And so the more love that we give ourselves, the more the body reflects the perfect pattern that we are in the mind of God. The healthier we are, the more vibrant we are, the more alive we are. So this practicing of inclusion. Practicing of inclusion has really taken hold in many circles on this planet. The ideas of inclusion, including others in our circle of love, including people no matter what their differences, their ethnicity, their religious background, their gender, their sexual orientation, their, whatever it might be. When we learn to be inclusive of people, when we bring them into our circle of love, everybody is happier. That's what is going to truly end all of this divisiveness and violence and everything else that's going on the planet. It's when we begin to see each other as of the same presence, of the same source. We're all children of the Most High, and we honor our differences. That's inclusion. We can again, apply that same principle to ourselves and embrace everything about ourselves, bring our whole selves into our circle of love. And the more we practice inclusion, then, the brighter we shine, the more brilliant we show up in our lives. The principle of emotional eruption. Diamonds, I don't know how many of you know this, but diamonds are formed down in the mantle of the earth. Deep, deep down in the mantle of the earth. And they come to the surface through volcanic eruption. Maybe what's happening in Hawaii right now, right? All these diamonds coming up to the surface. And so we can apply that same principle to our own lives. Those emotional eruptions that show up in our lives, anger, fear, whatever it might be, as opportunities to bring that brilliant essence of who we are to the surface. We can use that. We can use those emotions. I love the work of Gay Hendricks. He has a beautiful book out that's called Learning to Love Yourself that I've been reading, and he talks about his own journey of discovery of how to heal those things that he wasn't liking about himself. And what he discovered is that when he has an uncomfortable feeling of some kind, rather than to resist it or ignore it or call it a bad thing, instead he embraces it. He brings it into his circle of love. He embraces the feeling with love and feels it fully all the way until it dissipates. Now, the first time he did that, it took a half an hour. As the feelings came up, he felt them fully and they dissipated. And what happened when he did that is it's like the mind cleared out. It cleared the mind. And all of this luminosity, all of this beautiful energy of love and peace and joy that was hidden under the surface came rushing forward. And so then he wrote a book and shared it with the world. And so here's the thing that's really cool about that. Let's take anger, for instance. I over the past year or so, I've come to realize the value of anger. It has a value when we use it rightly. That's the whole point. So raw anger can lead to aggression. We know that. It can lead to violence. It can lead to conflict, and it can harm relationships. But that's when it's not used rightly. That's when it's like striking out and getting even, that kind of anger energy. But if we use anger the way that I just described that Gay Hendricks did, if we allow ourselves to feel it fully and discover what's behind it, because behind every emotion there's a thought. Is there an injustice that's happening? Is that why we're angry? Is there some injustice that's taking place in our lives personally or in the world? Something that we are being called to stand up for. Again, when we approach it in this way, we are using anger to strengthen the act of mind clarification, says Austin Channing Brown, who wrote a beautiful book on this whole thing of anger. She said, anger is not inherently destructive. My anger can be a force for good. It can be creative and imaginative, seeing a better world that doesn't yet seem to exist. So it can be used to further our visions. In fact, when you think about it, a lot of the really great movements, probably all the great movements that have taken place in civil rights of any kind, have risen out of anger. But we know that raw anger causes more destruction. But those who have been able to harness that energy and use it to activate themselves and other people to change things in a positive way, that's the reason why we have the changes that have taken place for humanity over a period of time. It's anger used rightly. I was thinking about Lynn Twist, who I talked about last week, if you were here last week, who decided to take on all of the extracting industries that were ravaging the rainforest. And she united with the indigenous peoples, the Aguar, Native American, or yeah, you call them Native American, Native South Americans, united with them and formed something called the Pachamama Alliance. And within 5 years of training them how to negotiate, how to, all of these skills where we put anger into a positive direction, it stopped. It stopped all of that destruction of the rainforests. And that's the thing that just blew my mind when I read the article. I'm going, oh my gosh, here I was still thinking it was all happening. And because of her brilliance of putting her anger and the anger of others into a positive direction, amazing transformation on the planet. We all have the power to do that in our own unique way, is bring that energy of love forward onto the planet, whatever ours is ours to do. And only we know what is ours to do. So the more that we embrace anger as a tool for transformation, the more brilliantly we shine. So I just want to go back to that beautiful quote by Holmes, "The river of life, the creative principle of spirit," and I'm going to paraphrase it a bit, "is all there is, and it is forever flowing through us." And it's not only ever flowing through us, it is ever carrying us forward. And again, we can take an active part. We can participate in that forward movement through the clarity of our thought, through focusing on the truth, for using those emotions that we have to make a difference, to use that anger, whatever it might be, to make a difference on the planet. So this is the practice then. This is the simple practice. It's paying attention to our thoughts. We do that, we cultivate that through meditation, being the witness. We watch the thoughts that show up in our minds, and then we replace them with wholesome truth. We replace them with wholesome truth. And little by little, we continue to uncover that amazing brilliance that is within us. And so I say, my friends, shine on. And so it is.